Hello. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Mental Health in Journalism Summit 2025. I'm very glad to have you here with us today. My name is Mar Cabra, as you can see on screen. It actually means sea goat. So you can call me with any of the translations in your languages because we have people from all over the world joining us from more than 40 countries, 700 registrations for this summit, which shows that mental health is no longer a taboo. We're here to battle the stigma and put it at the center of our organizations because healthy journalists are key to a healthy democracy. Thank you for joining us this year again. This is the second year we are doing this at the Self-Investigation. I'm the co-founder and executive director of the Self-Investigation, which is the organization behind the Mental Health in Journalism Summit. This year, because it is the second year, we're actually focusing on resilience for uncertain times. I don't think I have to explain you why. We are living one of the most complex times in history. So we're here to see what are the tools, skills, and conversations we can have to enhance our resilience. And in this year, we're really focusing on this topic because at the Self-Investigation, we've been working on mental health in journalism for 5 years, and we've seen the topic growing. And we're all about not only training individuals and training organizations. We've worked with more than 12,500 media professionals from across the globe and media organizations such as The Guardian, the Finnish Broadcasting Corporation, and the French News Agency. We're also about community. And you know what? Research shows that community is one of the core key aspects for strengthening resilience and for happiness as well. So during these 3 days, yesterday we started in Spanish, today and tomorrow, World Mental Health Day, we're going to be talking about how can we support our mental health so that we can do our work in the long run. Of course, if you want to continue the conversation afterwards with the Self-Investigation and you think we can support you or your organization, be in touch. You have our details there on the screen. Today we're here because of the work of many, many, many organizations supporting this summit, not just the Self-Investigation, also our key co-founder, the Fred Foundation, which is a Dutch foundation that is supporting humanity and the human values around the organizations that do social impact. And also our sponsors that you can see on screen, mostly big media organizations that are supporting the way we do journalism and support organizations within the journalism ecosystem. And the outreach partners are also key. Basically, these partners are from all over the world so that you can totally see the globality of this summit. The key work that we're doing, you're seeing me on the screen, but we have a whole team behind the scenes, Pilar, Maria, Marcos, Paula, who are just right behind me, but also all the volunteers that are donating their time to support all the sessions. We have 160 speakers from all over the world and about 50 sessions. So you can imagine there's a lot of work behind the scenes. So thank you, thank you, thank you to all of you. Of course, if you want to spread the word in social media, we encourage you to do so. Please use the hashtag MHJS25, the acronym for Mental Health in Journalism Summit 25. And feel free to tag us on X and LinkedIn because the Self-Investigation is in those two networks. Although if you use others like Blue Sky, Instagram, TikTok, feel free to spread the word and using that hashtag so we can track it and keep reutilizing this message so that it keeps reaching far and wide. Without further ado, I want you to meet the next panelists. And before I put them on stage, I want to tell you why we're starting the English-speaking section of the summit, which starts right now with this topic, from personal struggles to collective strength, a conversation on courage and change. We've seen so many stories of media professionals from around the world quitting their profession because they couldn't cope. And that's actually my story. I used to be an investigative journalist, was part of the Pulitzer Prize winning team of the Panama Papers, and I quit right after that because I did not know how to sustain my work in the long run. I forgot about myself. And we're also seeing that this issue is happening in other professions. It's actually very connected with the way we work, which is completely broken. But most importantly, it's broken in those professions where we deal with passion. And we think that passion is our main driver, and it's going to keep us alive, and it's going to keep us moving. But that's not true. And that's why we wanted to start with this inspirational panel where we could really speak and hear people from other industries that are promoting this key message of taking care of ourselves so that we can take care of the world. And I'm going to introduce you the moderator of this panel first, so that you can meet her. There you have it. Teressa, thank you for joining us. You're joining us from Hong Kong, right?
That's right, Mar. And I'm so glad to hear that you have over 700 people joining us now live. So joining you live from Hong Kong in the countryside, because that's really actually good for my well-being. And I truly believe what Mar just said. We are people of passion, and it's just so important that we need to be well in order to drive our passion forward. So thank you, Mar, for that great introduction. And without further ado, could I introduce our keynote speakers today? We have two
Sure,
of
but
them.
let me just tell Teressa one beautiful thing about you, which
Thank
is that, Teressa is a reporter and has a past in television and many years in the profession. But what I really like is that you're actually promoting now mental health at the university level, right? So you're teaching in Hong Kong, in the university there, young students how to really not only learn how to write, but also take care of themselves in the long run.
Yes, thank you for that, Mar. I feel my mission is so broad, but because I was a journalist and I see people suffering, and I want our colleagues to be well because I know how demanding our job is. So about 12 years ago, I was already promoting what you're promoting in a sense, but now there's more voice. And then because I always had a duty as an adjunct university professor, I decided that I would do this with my students. And every student that has come into my classrooms in the past 10 years get a dose of wellness before we begin the academic courses. So I've taught public speaking. I've been teaching communication courses, English, now journalism. And last year, I was really fortunate, and I felt so supportive that my program coordinator at the Hong Kong Baptist University, where I teach a master's in international journalism course. Under that, we proposed a course called Mental Health and Journalism. So I'm teaching it now for the second semester. And just a couple of days ago, when I was connecting with Aaron and Louisa, I took my students onto a wellness retreat in the mountains of Hong Kong, where they actually get to experience what it's like to do a digital detox, where they actually get to experience to eat holistic foods, because I'm a holistic nutritionist as well. And they were so happy. But one thing that they came to be aware of was that in a 20-year-old body, they felt like a 40-year-old because they weren't able they haven't had that accessibility. They haven't had the access to spend time in nature or hike up a really long hill and feel get the energy going and feel the freedom of being in nature and not just focus on their academic goals. So we did really well that day. It was fantastic.
I'm glad to hear. Thank you, Teressa, for sharing. Let me bring back to the stage the slide.
Yeah, while
you
you
can
do
see
that,
here of the panel.
Yes.
Sorry?
No, I said while you're doing that, I also want to say a gratitude message to you is I'm so grateful for you and your team that are putting this together, that are voicing about this, and that are raising awareness in our community, and not just in journalism, but in the other media professions, and also beyond that, because this is for the collective. What are we doing is just not for our own colleagues. So thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Teressa. And with these words of gratitude, I'm going to bring into the stage Luisa Zondo and Aaron Pereira, the next speakers of this panel. And I'm going to leave the floor to you guys so that you can start this beautiful and insightful conversation. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mar, and welcome, Aaron, and welcome, Louisa. Louisa Zanto, activist joining us from Johannesburg, South Africa. And Aaron, with the angelic background there, is joining us from Paris, France. Thank you so much. So can I just have a little bit of a brief introduction about what you do? I have been learning a little bit more about you since our conversation. So Louisa is the director of the Ricky Rick foundation in South Africa, and the foundation is actually named after her late son. We'll go into a little bit about that if Louisa is comfortable sharing about that part of her journey. And obviously, she's a mother. And Aaron is the co-lead for the Wellbeing Project. Both of them change makers, leading the way in social change. And one of the common themes that we talked about was, while doing the great work that we do and while being on a mission, we need to be well. And having the courage to change, and both of them have experienced a lot of lows in their lives. And so I like to start this conversation, if I can, and welcome, by the way, is to have the both of you put in context to our audience that are listening and joining us today. Where have you been with your personal struggles and in your professional careers? Just give us a context of where have you been in your journey of resilience. Louisa, can we start with you?
Yes, thank you. And thank you for that warm welcoming, Teresa and Mar. I will start with where I am right now, being one of the co-founders of the Ricky Rick Foundation for the Promotion of Artivism. I am sort of immersed in the work of valuing and centering culture and the arts, creativity, imagination in the journey of living life. And the journey of living life for me and for many others has always had a gaze at how we can participate in changing the things that don't land as safe, just, and need to be changed in the world. So this term of change maker is not very familiar to me, but it feels like it is quite apt, because for all of life, there has always been an association with wanting to make it better, wanting to bring in justice in all its forms, walking in solidarity with others. So I have a background as a human rights, trained as a human rights lawyer. That's my academic background. I'm a mother of 4 sons, one of whom has passed, and one daughter who is, and I'm a was based in the UK, and I'm a wife to an interesting man who is all over in the world right now, because he is still that type of involved activist. So let me stop it there.
Yeah, Aaron?
What a question. Where have I been? Where am I? Let me just start by saying first, I want to echo what Louisa said about the warm welcome. Thank you to you and to Mar. And I have to say, the way that Mar opened, I was starting to feel really excited. It was such a great way of opening this conversation. I think, where have I been? So I think, like, as it relates to this, and maybe before diving in, I think for me, there's sort of like 3 things that are really important. One is this journey with mental health, the journey with our own inner health, is an ongoing journey through life. There's not a moment where you say, like, you've figured all of this stuff out. And for me, this is something that's a very strong clarity after 25 years of journeying with this. And that's part of what makes it extraordinary. So I just want to say that on one hand. And the second is, like, what it does open up is this pretty extraordinary discovery that there are different ways of doing things that become really nourishing, or more and more nourishing, more and more meaningful, more and more grounding. And so I'm saying those things before saying the journey to that for me was going through one really significant burnout by the time I was 21, and thinking that was the end of like my career basically, and getting close to burnout again when I was 24, 25. And this was doing work in social change, as one of those people that Louisa referred to as a change maker. And so it's been quite the journey. And so for me, really what's meaningful is looking at how we really take that journey. I know Louisa has more to share about that too. So Teresa, I'll pass it back to you.
Yeah, so I think, what I want to ask is, what was it like, Louisa, when in your earlier days as a, doing social change, as a change maker? What was it like when you weren't paying attention to your well-being? Now that obviously it's different because you've been in it for a long time. What was it like differently, so that we can share that and reflect that to our audience as well, that who are seeking for answers?
So the context is apartheid South Africa, where the struggle for the humanity, the recognition of the humanity of all, is what we are engaged with. So starting from childhood, this awareness that because I am not white in South Africa, I really do not have value. And navigating that and allowing the responses, I don't want to use the term reaction, even though it was more reaction, the responses to be what fuels the activism that follows from that. And so activism meant that there is this absolute steeped state where we are focused on fighting this tyranny of oppression that is apartheid in all forms. And the commitment is to be alongside everyone and everything that is committed to overthrowing apartheid, the system of apartheid. So it was about fighting the system. We did have very instinctual ways of attending to the adverse effects of being constantly in that traumatic state, that survival state, of trying to outwit the dangers of fighting apartheid. Because, for example, we sang at funerals, we danced at funerals. Our cries were laced with songs of praise. We were laced with artistry, with poetry, with storytelling, with performance of the arts, and we allowed this to lift us up. But what most of us did not have the capacity for was the more intentional and intense gaze at ourselves, the places from which we came in order to challenge and fight against and to change the apartheid system. And when that happens, what we see is continuous pouring out from places of pain as a reaction and limiting the ability to be creative in seeing what our capacities are. So even though instinctually there was creativity, there was connection to community, there was the opportunity to experience joy in the liberation struggle, the deliberate inward gaze, which then asks the question, who are we? Who on earth are we? What are these connections to everything that is life? And once we understand that, we start moving from a place that enables deeper solidarity, that enables deeper connection to struggles that we may, at the face level, think are not connected to us. But once we see connectedness through the inner lens, we then become more powerful activists, change makers. Therefore, the well-being journey stops being something that's seen as an indulgence, but it becomes a responsibility.
There's a lot of key words that you touched here, and Aaron, then I'll go to you. And I agree, because I want to follow up on what both of you said. The nourishment and self-value, which is what Louisa is really saying, that comes the trauma. We needed to find a way to find self-worth. Could I go to Aaron for that? And why would looking inside an inward journey become so nourishing and so powerful towards the end and forward? It's not the end, because like you said, it doesn't ever end. It's a continuous journey.
I have to say, like, listening to Louisa, I just wanted to continue listening to Louisa. So, because I think she was talking about this in an extraordinarily powerful way. I think there are two things that come to mind for me, and this was part of the framing that was shared at the outset. So, and this speaks to the community that's gathered for this conference and many other communities that are gathered around work that we do that has either a mission or a vocation. So these are roles where in some kind of way we can be of service to something larger than ourselves. And particularly with that kind of work, what it does is it challenges us at a much more personal level, because it's harder for us to say no and to put boundaries in place, because we literally feel that and in some cases that might be the case, we are in service of something greater than us. There's something greater than us that might depend on us. So there's that part. And at the same time, what's also happening is, because of how strongly we feel this in the sense of mission, that's there, it also brings up all of the things that we carry within us, places where we might need acknowledgement, places that we might need healing. And so I love the way that Louisa framed this. As we do work on the outside, there's this invitation at the same time to pay attention to ourselves. And that invitation makes a really, really big difference day by day, week by week. Part of the framing at the beginning was also about how we're living in complex times again. And just to speak for myself, like earlier this week, there was just, again, a sensation of a lot happening and a sense of feeling, wow, this world feels, and this was really me feeling this way, a little bit wobbly. And so having something to turn to pay attention, to realize I need to really pay attention to what's going on for me so that I can actually be better about the work that I do, is probably, in one sense, like the most important muscle to exercise. We at the Wellbeing Project see this, like this question that's present for those of us with work that has a mission or a vocation across a whole range of different fields. And we see the challenge across a whole range of different fields. So this ranges from journalists that are doing work that's in service of the public interest, to activists, to teachers, nurses, and doctors. And in all of these spaces, with this work that's so critical for holding community, we're seeing very high burnout rates, very high depression rates, very high medical issue rates. These are higher than any other sector. And so for us, there's this systemic piece of really, how do we build a culture where we make it possible and okay to care for ourselves as we do this important work? And how do we give ourselves permission and realize, as Louisa said, that this is not an indulgence, but actually it's a radical act in and of itself And what happens as a result is that it brings to life new ways of social change happening, or whatever it is we might be doing, that in ways that become more creative, more innovative, more collaborative, and really, for me, give us a sense of possibility and hope in a world that sorely needs it. So, Teresa, I hope that helps as a bit of like a broader framing for what we're also seeing all around the world.
It's very good. These are messages that we all need to hear, Aaron and Louisa. Let's continue the conversation, but I guess I'll get into the little bit practicalities, is that for our audience hearing here. Now, you talk about burnout, and I also personally experienced it last year. I took a month off and just went to the same mountain I was at on Tuesday. What does burnout feel like to you, Aaron, at that point, and what prompted you to just take time off for you? And then that same question could go to Louisa, maybe at the point of your lowest point in your life where you just had too much, doing too much, it became too much. You needed to take care of you. How did you both do it?
So for me, the experience of burnout was one where I got to a place, and again, this will speak to disconnection from my body, and the need to really pay attention to that. So what I got to a place of was utter exhaustion, to the point where sound would make my skin crawl. Even light actually exhausted me. And I was in a place where that was the case for a few months. And overall, like, just everything felt slower, especially my brain. Like, I felt like I was in the midst of a mist, in the middle of a swamp almost. And it was hard for me to feel like I was putting thoughts together in any kind of way that made sense. And it really took me about 18 months to go from one end of that to the other. I think this was a bit more of an extreme case in a number of ways, but that was that first opening where I was like, wait a second, there's something that I need to be paying attention to here. So yeah. Louisa?
Yeah. Yes, thank you. And Louisa, would you like to add to that? It's is it okay if I could bring in, just listening to your speech in Bilbao there, which Aaron hosted a couple years ago, right? You talk about, I guess my understanding of you is that the most traumatizing experience was, and I feel like crying now, sorry, was losing your son. And that was that really pivotal point where you just went inward and say, look, I need to look at whether there is, and then you discover a deeper existence, right? A gift in all this experience. Would you like to share that with us?
Yeah, for me, it is very interesting that I had been experiencing burnout for years and masking it and continuing with life, just rolling with life, being very poor and bad at everything. The levels of exhaustion I would experience after a day of work just was not normal. I would enter the house and go straight into my room. Children may not even see me until the following day at times. But now on reflection, that was the burnout that was coming from just not taking pause and looking at what was happening inside of me. The tragedy of losing our son is what caused that pattern not to continue. It had to stop. I had to stop that damaging behavior, and because I had nothing left in me. I just had nothing left in me, and to be honest, I could not see life continuing. I could not see how I was going to continue with life, and that's when the step, which was a major step for me, of going and staying in therapy happened. My husband took me and sat with me in therapy. And it was through this giving in to weekly sessions of engaging with what is happening with me, what has happened over time with me, that various modalities, including plant medicine, including indigenous healing methodologies, meditation, and all of this happen, and even support from psychedelic science helped me to start engaging with not only our son's death, but the traumas that had been hidden in me and were causing my life to be unmanageable. And yet I did not have the story to myself to confirm the truth, which was in a home experience, people had come in, assaulted us, and sexually assaulted me, but I had allowed that to go down and be suppressed, and it was showing itself over years in the body that was thoroughly exhausted and doing things that seemed to be very, very, very irrational. So yes, that is the experience in different forms, as Aaron says. The journeys are different, the experiences are different, but what it does need is the opportunity to pause and walk with what makes sense with us in different spaces and times, to look inward and allow the stories that are about how we are experiencing life to emerge, and for us to be able to review this, and for us to be able to build new pathways that help us to cope with life, to navigate a life in ways that are wholesome.
You're amazing, Louisa. Thank you for sharing your vulnerability. And it just takes so much courage to accept all that you've been through and to realize that there's a gift in it. And Aaron, you want to add something to that? Aaron's just listening. This is deep work. It's really deep work.
Yeah. And I think what would be interesting is actually to see if there are any questions that are there, or any reflections.
Okay.
And I'm saying that also because we're all in this together. And I think that that's really, really important. This is like an utterly human journey. And just the fact that people are showing up and being curious and interested, like the fact that there's 700 people signed up for this, is absolutely extraordinary. And so I just feel like a sense of community, in a sense, with everyone here. And so just really curious, like what's present for people that are listening in.
Mm-hmm. So we have a comment from Thao. I looks like she's from Vietnam, right, Thao? If I'm not correct, if I'm correct on that, just judging by your name, she's saying so inspiring to hear and listen to Louisa share her experience and you know, all the traumatizing events. And so she's just sending you a big hug there, and that's wonderful. Well, I have a question while we have other people in the audience. Thanks for that, Aaron. You know, what it takes to be vulnerable, I think a shared experience is that most people don't know how to be vulnerable, or they think that it's not okay to have to voice how we feel. Like you said, burnout, for example. I mean, when I told my friends I was burnout and stopped contacting me, like I wanted just to disconnect, it seemed like people, they just couldn't relate. Most of them couldn't relate, and these are my closest friends. So how do we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, like you and Louisa and myself? It is okay to be vulnerable. It is okay to say, I am not okay. Could we have some inspiring messages for our audience there listening that are perhaps sharing the same question that I have?
Maybe
Aaron,
I could start.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I actually think that perhaps the three most important words, which sometimes are the most difficult words to say, are I need help. But there's a sense of relief that comes with that, and acknowledging that. that is just profoundly important. I'm saying this, and I think for me that has been one of the hardest things to learn. I think especially with the way that men are socialized, it's harder for us to learn how to say those words, to recognize that we need help, that we can't hold and do everything ourselves. And it's an ongoing practice, because it's not like you need help one time and that's it. It's like it's an ongoing journey of realizing actually we live in profound interrelationship, and there's always going to be a giving and a receiving. And so opening up to that feels really important. And I would just say it's incredibly brave and courageous to lean into recognizing both our vulnerability and sharing it and asking for that help. So I'm saying this also partly as a mantra for myself, as an ongoing reminder, because it just feels really fundamental and important. Louisa?
I like that, Aaron. I'm sure we all come from different cultures where even me growing up in America, we were all groomed to suppress, right? And by just acknowledging and saying the 3 words, I need help or I'm not okay, I think it also improves the relationships around us, right? And Louisa, maybe you could share that by your husband being such, being so supportive in taking you to therapy on all that. What other people have you reached out to that have supported you in this journey by the time you said, I'm not okay, I need help?
So there have been many people that I've had access to. But Aaron is so accurate in constantly reminding us that this is an ongoing journey. And the journey starts or carries as a huge element of it this distinct experience of the individual and the community that the individual has been exposed to, or communities that the individual has been exposed to, and how those experiences formed patterns in the individual. So for me, the patterns that were formed in me were deep patterns of doubting self, really feeling the need to work hard, to be valued, to be loved. And so that was a background that I did not obviously have all the time, but I came to realize in this journey of attending to well-being. And so when I say I need help, that is just scratching the surface, because what is still there and still needs constant attending to is the overcoming of what causes me to procrastinate, which is the self-criticism, which derives from my interpretation of life constantly criticizing me and therefore telling me that I am not really valued. Doesn't matter what degrees I come out with, doesn't matter what achievements, but underlying is the message that has formed a pattern in me that says, still not valued. And so recognizing those things that we come from becomes an important part of our journey. And that's why even today, I am still in training to attend to my vulnerability, so that when I say I need help, it is also accompanied by opening up the space for the help to come in and be meaningful. Thanks.
I just want to add to what Louisa so beautifully described.
That's right. Aaron, you were going to say?
So Louisa just talked about how, and I think this is true for all of us, we all have internalized in different ways a voice that's very critical. And at some point, probably that voice played a role in helping us survive and helping us even do well. But I think the thing is, there's the initial recognition, and the initial recognition is a wonderful thing. But then there's like many, many more recognitions, and there's much more work as you get to know the voice, as you get to understand this about yourself, as you really start to be able to find yourself, to be able to be present today. And along that journey, that part about, it's not a journey that we take by ourselves, it's a journey that we take in community or with support. And so that part of always recognizing, A, it's an ongoing journey, and B, we're always going to be like looking for help. And there are always going to be new things that emerge as we go from one stage of life to another stage of life. It's a very dynamic, and I think that's a beautiful thing. It's a very dynamic and profound journey. I also want to appreciate what Olga put into the chat. For all of us, our mental health is really, really profoundly important already for our own lives. And I just want to say that for our own lives, for ourselves, for our families, for our friends, the way that we interrelate with all of that gives us so much meaning, as much as for our work.
Yeah, I so agree with that too. What we do benefits everyone around us, and it does take work. And maybe we could tap into the idea of someone wanting to get started is, Aaron and Louisa have done a lot of deep work, and it's been a long, long journey for the both of you. And I could relate to that as well. For people that are just starting, as an international wellness speaker, sometimes I would say, start with your lifestyle, look into, are you getting good sleep? Are you eating well? Things that you could relate to on a day-to-day basis. And then you could work it, because it's never one, going from 0 to 100%, right, Aaron and Louisa? It's bits and pieces of work, and putting that, different pieces together before you get to a certain place of Zen.
Yeah, I just want to quote Louisa, actually. Louisa, I'm going to quote you, then we can pass it. I'm going to quote you and pass it back to you. I love what Louisa said about us. Like, I feel like I'm in training. Like, and I think that is always going to be the case. So there is no 100 kilometers an hour or 16 miles an hour. It still is very much in training. And so, Louisa, thank you for bringing that framing.
Yeah, and one thing I like to say to echo that is there's no shortcut to life. And on that note, we'll cut to Mar, who has some questions on behalf of our audience, right? Mar, what would you like to ask?
Yes. So this is a global conference, and some people are still asleep, right? So all the people in the US, for example, we have a big audience there. In North America, is just sleeping, right? So I wanted to echo some of the questions that we tend to have around this topic. And when we had attendees fill in their questions, a lot of them were speaking about community and how do we strengthen our community. And I think Aaron, Louisa, both of you have a lot of experience with that. Full disclosure, I'm very connected to the Wellbeing Project. I was just there in Slovenia recently, a couple of months ago, or a few months ago, before the summer, European summer, in Slovenia, and the Hearth Summit, which is your global event at the Wellbeing Project that happens every 2-3 years, and you gather change makers from all over the world to build this community. And Aaron, at the Wellbeing Project, you've done an amazing work over the 10 years already about strengthening community. So what can you tell to this community about the power of building collective resilience?
So I'll do a very small thing and then love to pass it over to Louisa. I'm going to say one thing, actually, which is I think a really cool research piece. So one of the things that we've heard about over the last few years is research that was done on basically the things that nourish us and the things that support our well-being. And this is research work that Richie Davidson at the University of Madison, Wisconsin has talked about. And so I think it's appropriate to bring that in here. And the findings basically are, in a world where we talk a lot about mindfulness, a world where we talk a lot about meditation, recent research has also shown that spending time meaningfully in community, being with community, is as effective or even maybe more effective than meditation and mindfulness. And so I'm bringing that into the frame because community is profoundly important. Now, community might not be partying, but community might be rich relationship and practices within a community. It might be places where dialogue and dance and art, as Louisa described, and other things are possible. But that is something that's really, really important and nourishing for us. So that's a research frame for this. And Louisa, I feel like you can talk
Yeah.
about this as well, given what you were talking about earlier in the chat.
Yeah. So very much so. Community is medicine, really. And as you know, with medicine, there may be overreaches, and it may bring in some damage. So community has got to be held with care. So that we are not, our individual gifts, talents, and identities are not going to be lost in community, but they are going to contribute and be gifts to community and enrich the experience and the outcomes of being in community. So that's these are some of the things we attend to. And so when we take the inner journey, we are cultivating that ability to be very focused, present, useful contributors to community, who then are able to understand. I'm not going to point only at the head, but I'm pointing at the whole nervous system, going to understand our own prejudices, so that when we are in community, we are able to breathe in and out and bring in the relaxation, which keeps us very much aware of how we are causing harm and damage to others as well, and bring ourselves back to connectivity, back to connection in community. And that is what the movement global activism is about. We really need to, as humanity, we need to realize how culture, the arts, everything about life is art. So how we can allow this gift to bring this connection, this healing, this deeper awareness of who we are.
Louisa, that was so
Thank
beautifully
you,
said. I'm just gonna, Teresa, maybe I could just add a couple of things to what Louisa said. So just for
Of
people
course.
out there, like, this word community can seem like a very big one, especially if like there's a place you might have moved to a new place, or it's not something that you've really engaged in. One of the things that I find fantastic is that there are a number of places that have created kits basically for how to be in community around different things, or the places where you find it woven in the way that Louisa just described. So I'm going to give two examples, and it just hopefully acts as a bit of a signpost for people who are listening for where to look for this. The Quaker community in the Quaker community in the US and other places actually has a number of like practices that you can find on, for example, the Center for Courage and Renewal on their website, things like clearness committees, other things that allow you to sit with community and reflect together in ways that are really supportive of people's vulnerability. And these are the kinds of like practices that we used to have in multiple ways in communities that are really, really extraordinary. So that would be one sort of like signpost. Another, and you can do this in a completely secular way, but for example, a Zen Buddhist community or a yoga community, what Lisa was talking about is how when you're together with a group, people synchronize their breath, people breathe together and find that larger sense of collective holding. And you'll see that often with the way that breath practices are done in those kinds of settings. And that just the act of breathing together or singing together, to come back to the art that Louisa was talking about, if you can find a group that actually sing together, and there are lots of different types of ways of doing that, from like gospel music to Indian mantras and other things. Those are things that really, really support. So hopefully there's a few little signposts for people in that.
Those are great, Aaron. Thank you so much for your insights, and Louisa. And I think having these practical tips and signposts and where to find resources is so important to our audience. And, you know, like in Hong Kong here, we have drum classes where you're just drumming all the time and you release whatever you need to release. And I think the way we put together here today is having the courage to voice your needs and having the willingness to say, I need help and I like to move forward with healing. And healing could be done with just people you trust, as you know, as simple as finding one person you could trust and start voicing your needs and what you're feeling and what you're going through. So thank you so much again, Louisa. I'm getting a prompt here to wrap up and end our conversation here. I do wish we could continue, and we touch on just a lot of aspects on resilience and going really deep inward and finding the gift, you know, in our traumas, in our journeys, and being able to have that power and that empowerment to do the greater things, because without well-being, our individual well-being, we are unable to move forward as a collective. So let's move forward without judgment, supporting each other, feeling vulnerable, feeling whatever we need to feel the bigger power and do the bigger things that we need to do. So thank you, all of you, for listening. And thank you again, Louisa and Aaron. And Mark, can I pass that back to you?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Aaron, Louisa, and Teresa, for such a wonderful job. Big applause, which is hard to hear, but you're hearing it from me now, and we'll let you go. Bye-bye. Thank you. Thank you so much to the three of you. A lot of resources in that talk. Global Artivism, it's a movement that you can follow, and they also have in-person conferences that you can go to, and the Wellbeing Project. You should keep an eye, because the Hearth Summit, the main sessions were recorded, and they were wow, and they're coming up on YouTube and their website soon. So keep an eye on those two resources among the many that were shared today. And we need to move on, because we have more sessions coming up. If you just got in here via YouTube and you don't know what we're talking about, Mental Health in Journalism Summit, what's this? If you go to mhjournalismsummit.org, you'll be able to register. I was just told by the team that we just hit the 800 registrations. So you're still in time to register. And of course, if you're listening this and it's November, December, it's 2027, don't worry. We're recording most of the sessions and you'll be able to access them later after the fact. So don't have fear of missing out. We got you. This is the link so you can access it later. Of course, you're listening in YouTube. This is on the Self-Investigations YouTube. Subscribe wherever that is. I never know where to point, but we encourage you to subscribe so that you can follow other keynotes of this summit and other materials that we produce. And coming up next, we have sessions coming up at the top of the hour, 12 p.m. Central European time. You need to calculate your different timings depending on where you are. Amazing sessions, especially focused on solutions. We're focusing on how to do this because that's what the community brought up. This is a program that was built by proposals from the community. So coming up next, a lot of sessions about how do we put this in practice. And we have a whole block, and we're going to be working together and learning from each other until 8 p.m. Central European time. So full program in the link that you're seeing on screen as well. We've also put the links in the chat. And with that, this little face reminded me that let's take a breather. I hope you can get a break, hopefully outside of the screen. And if you're joining us, you have at least 6 minutes to take that break and breathe outside of the screen. Thank you. See you later.